There's blood all over the side. Shotgun shells everywhere. The officer's voice trembled as the dash cam recorded the horrifying discovery. The trunk of a Chevrolet Impala had just been opened. Inside was the lifeless body of a 6-year-old boy. His body riddled with bullets, his tiny form wrapped in a blood-soaked blanket like discarded trash. The boy's name was Eli Hart, and the woman behind the wheel? His own mother. On May 20th, 2022, in the quiet rural town of Orono, Minnesota, a routine traffic stop unraveled into one of the most haunting child murder cases in the state's history. Officers had pulled over a vehicle that was driving erratically, its rear tire missing, back windshield blown out, and blood visibly smeared across its frame. The woman inside seemed agitated, offering a string of nonsensical explanations. Deer meat, tampons. A joke, surely. But what lay in that trunk wasn't roadkill. It was the broken body of her child, Eli Hart, shot multiple times while still strapped into his booster seat. And that was just the beginning. If you think the system failed him, you're not alone. Hit the like button. The tragedy didn't unfold in isolation. It was the end of a long and disturbing road paved with red flags, ignored warnings, and systemic failure. May 10, 2022, just 10 days before the murder, a judge had awarded full custody of Eli to his mother, Julissa Thaler. Despite a documented history of mental illness, substance abuse, and erratic behavior, Thaler was granted full parental rights. It was a move that would seal Eli's fate. May 19th, the last day of Eli's life. He was picked up from school by his mother. Surveillance footage shows her later that evening placing a large wrapped object, believed to be his body, into the trunk of her car. The next morning, she drove around town, blood on her clothes, the body still in the trunk. She even stopped at a car wash. May the 20th. A call to police about a suspicious vehicle led to the stop. The woman inside was acting odd. When officers opened the trunk, the horror became undeniable. Shotgun shells were scattered around. The child had been shot 9 times. The mother was arrested that same day, after initially being released. Later searches of her devices would reveal chilling Google queries. How much blood can a 6-year-old lose? Most powerful knockout drug. Can you get life insurance on a child without income? And finally, how to fake being home for the police. What was discovered wasn't just a murder, it was a blueprint for one. Eli Hart wasn't just a name in a news article. He was a smiling, joyful little boy with a gap-toothed grin and a deep love for the outdoors. His favorite things were blowing bubbles, swinging at the park, playing with toy cars, and eating meatballs at Carboni's. He loved animals, books, and being silly with his father. Eli had been born with Townes-Brocks syndrome, a rare genetic disorder that required multiple surgeries and lifelong medical care. But none of that dimmed his spirit. His teachers described him as energetic, sweet, and endlessly curious. To his foster parents, Nikita and Stephen, he was a light in their home. And to his father, Torrey Hart, he was everything. Torrey had fought relentlessly to be part of Eli's life. He taught him to ride a bike, took him fishing, and planned a future full of memories. But every step forward was blocked by Julissa, through false protection orders, emotional manipulation, and a legal system that never seemed to listen. Eli lived in chaos but brought joy wherever he went. His laughter filled every room. He had a future, a childhood to grow into. But instead, he died alone in the backseat of a car, gunned down by the one person meant to protect him. If this story breaks your heart, share it. More people need to know who Eli really was. It didn't take a seasoned detective to recognize the horror of what they were seeing. Eli's body was discovered in the trunk of a Chevy Impala, partially wrapped in a white blanket, still strapped into the booster seat where he had died. There were 9 bullet wounds in total, 5 to the back, 2 to the chest, 1 to the hand, and another to the head. Investigators at the scene would later say the child showed defensive wounds, suggesting he was awake, aware, and terrified when the first shots were fired. Scattered across the vehicle were spent shotgun shells, a large amount of blood, and children's belongings, eerie reminders of a life brutally erased. In the back seat was a child's jacket, soaked in blood. In the front, a used shell casing sat near the glove compartment. On Julissa's person, a cell phone smeared in blood and gunpowder residue. The vehicle itself was falling apart. a blown-out rear window, a flat tire shredded from long-distance driving post-murder. Police believe she had driven around for an entire day with her son's corpse in the trunk, possibly searching for a place to dump the body. Inside Julissa Thaler's apartment, officers found a small, emptied gun case, a notebook with disturbing scribbles, and a black garbage bag filled with bloodied clothes, spent shells, and remnants of Eli's belongings. They later found the murder weapon, a 12-gauge shotgun, stuffed into a dumpster at a local gas station. It had Thaler's prints all over it. But it wasn't just the physical evidence that disturbed police. It was the cold, calculated nature of her behavior. If this scene chills you, imagine being the officer who had to unzip that trunk. Tell us what you felt in the comments. Julissa Thaler wasn't an unknown quantity to the authorities. In fact, she was a walking red flag, and they knew it. Her criminal history included multiple run-ins with Child Protective Services, past hospitalizations for mental illness, and a long record of delusional behavior. She had previously lost custody of Eli in early 2021 after showing signs of instability, frequent drug use, and erratic decisions. Yet somehow, just 10 days before his murder, she was granted full custody. When questioned by police after her arrest, Thaler offered a web of contradictory lies. First, she claimed she didn't know Eli was in the trunk. Then, she said someone had planted him there. At one point, she insisted she'd been hunting deer and must have mistaken him for an animal. Yes, she tried to claim she had shot her child by accident, mistaking him for a deer. Phone records revealed she had searched online for terms like, "How much blood can a 6-year-old lose?" "Gun that won't be traced?" "How to make someone disappear?" She even looked up life insurance for kids just weeks before Eli's death. It was clear this wasn't a moment of madness. It was a meticulously planned execution. And worse, she seemed proud of it. In court, Julissa smiled during her hearings. She laughed at moments that made others weep. She showed no visible signs of remorse. And when asked why she murdered her son, she remained silent. If you want to see more disturbing cases that leave you questioning humanity, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. The turning point came not during the arrest, but months earlier, when a family court judge handed Julissa full custody of Eli, against all professional recommendations. Despite warnings from Eli's foster parents, teachers, and even his own father, the court cited parental rights and awarded Julissa full control. Eli's father, Eli Hart, had been fighting to gain custody. He had passed every test, secured a stable home, and been consistent in visitations. But Julissa manipulated the system, using protection orders and legal threats to keep Tori away. Documents later revealed that CPS and court-appointed psychologists had all recommended against returning Eli to Julissa. But the judge chose otherwise. When Tori found out that Julissa had been given full custody, he cried, "I told them. If they gave her custody, my son would die," he later said in court. He was right. And that decision, made in a courtroom, signed in ink, became Eli's death sentence. Julissa Thaler wasn't just a broken mother. She was a storm of chaos waiting to detonate. Court documents described her as mentally unstable, manipulative, and obsessed with control. She had been diagnosed with several psychological conditions, including depression, substance abuse disorder, and delusional paranoia. But none of that justified what she did. It only made the warning signs more vivid and more tragic for being ignored. What drove her to murder her own child? According to prosecutors, Julissa feared losing control of Eli. She had recently been informed that Eli Hart, Eli's biological father, was gaining momentum in his legal battle. Full custody was slipping from her hands. And instead of accepting that her son would be safe and loved in someone else's care, she decided if she couldn't have him, no one could. That's not maternal instinct. That's annihilation. Investigators said she'd planned it days in advance. The shotgun she used was purchased legally just weeks prior. She practiced loading it. She researched child mortality statistics. She rehearsed her lies, and when the time came, she didn't hesitate. She loaded Eli into the back of her car, drove him away from everything familiar, and then pulled the trigger, not once, but 9 times. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a decision, and that decision cost an innocent 6-year-old his life. If you agree this was never about madness, but about cruelty, hit the like button. Julissa Thaler was charged with first-degree premeditated murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in February 2023. The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was read. But no sentence could bring back Eli. The judge said, "Your actions were pure evil. There is no other word for what you did." Eli's father, Eli Hart, stood in that courtroom and spoke through tears. He didn't cry for vengeance. He cried for every missed bedtime story, every soccer game that would never be played, every hug that he would never feel again. He cried for the system that failed his son, not once, but repeatedly. In the months following Eli's murder, lawmakers and child welfare advocates pushed for new legislation in Minnesota. Dubbed Eli's Law, the initiative aimed to prevent children from being returned to parents who had histories of abuse, mental instability, or neglect, even if biological ties remained. It was too late for Eli. But maybe, just maybe, his death could save another life. Today, a memorial bench sits in a quiet park near Orono. On it, a plaque reads, "In loving memory of Eli Hart. You were bright, you were brave, you were loved." And somewhere out there, another child is tucked into bed at night, safe, because someone remembered Eli's name. What do you think? Should the judge who returned custody be held accountable? Let us know in the comments. If stories like this leave a mark on your soul, don't forget to subscribe. We cover cases the world forgot, but shouldn't have.